Hello, buddy. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be starting a brand new campaign with Ikkit Claw. It's going to be a Skaven campaign using the SFO mod. I'll have a link to this mod in the description. Be sure to check it out. It adds a lot of excellent new features to it that helps improve the game. I think the vanilla game's awesome, but the SFO mod adds a lot of extra good stuff in there, so be sure to check out that link. And special thanks to Mozzie, Ryan, and Avery for sponsoring this campaign. This is highly requested. We had 3 different people that wanted to sponsor this, so thank you very much. We'll definitely be digging in there and doing a deep dive on this campaign.
We must preserve this world.
Now, we're not doing Deathmaster Snitch. I know people might want Deathmaster Snitch. 2 of the supporters here wanted Ikkit Claw. And the other one was on board with that too. He was okay with Ikkit Claw as well. But we are going to confederate with Deathmaster Snitch. We're going to try to hunt him down and confederate with him at some point and play as well. But I do think that Ikkit Claw, he does add a lot of extra fun, strategic choices. I know Deathmaster probably does a little bit as well, and Deathmaster's the newest one as of the making of this video. This is about March of 2020 when I'm starting recording this. Actually, I mean, it literally is like March 5th of 2020. But depending on when you watch it, that's when this is getting released. So if there's any future DLC or whatever going on, you'll kind of know the situation. But he gets the lab, which I think is really cool. I believe he is one of the best legendary lords in the game as far as like the campaign goes. There's several really good things about him. He specializes in the weapons teams, which I think are the best aspect of the Skaven. They have a lot of different units that you can use in a lot of different strategic ways in the battle, and that's why, you know, they've been one of my favorite factions since they were released. They're definitely up there in terms of one of my favorites, because they are very diverse, and there's just a lot of different things that you get to try to manage to play them properly. Because like on the surface, if you don't play them correctly, if you don't mix their units well and even micro them fairly well in battle, then they can feel really weak. But if you use them correctly, they can be really strong. So what is it about Ikkit? He gets the lab. I'll show you when we get in there, which allows him to get special upgrades on the weapons teams units, and a lot of those can be very powerful in the right situations. He also has the ability to create basically these nukes, these warp doom rocket bombs, which are kind of expensive to build, but they are kind of like your oh crap button. If you're fighting a really tough fight, they can basically just do, it's like a massive meteor basically hits and does a ton of damage to whatever it hits. So that can be your ace in tough situations if you stockpile those. He does get a discount on Warp Lock Jezzail's Rattling Guns and Warp Fire Throwers. So the Jezzails are awesome. Those are some of the best weapons teams. Rattling Guns are good to have 1 or 2. Warp Fire Thrower, a little bit less good in a lot of situations, but having one of them can certainly be pretty good to help you melt low armored infantry on the front line. So those can be pretty decent. Then he gets a discount for constructing the engineering building, which is okay. Loyalty for new recruits. It's actually pretty good. SFO makes loyalty a lot more of a tricky sort of mechanic that you have to actively manage. It gives you choices a lot of times, like take some kind of penalty or lose loyalty, or you can pay loyalty to get a certain perk on lords and things like that. So they make it a lot cooler and a lot more interesting than the vanilla game, and it's a lot harder to manage it. And then you get research rate 25%. The Skaven have several really good researches, so so that's a really good trait as well. And then there's several other things we'll talk about as we get in there. But legendary, very hard. Let's go ahead and get going. So I'll explain as much as I can during the end term about how the Skaven work as well. And then the first episode is going to have quite a bit of just explaining like a bunch of the different changes that have been coming in. There have been a couple of new units that have come in since the most recent DLC a couple of months ago with Deathmaster Snitch. You have the what are they? The mortars, like the new mortar units, Plague Wind mortars, and then you have the Eshin Triads, which are kind of like an anti-large assassin type of unit. And then you have a whole new school of magic as well. We're probably not going to use that school of magic. This kind of assassin magic, I think, is relatively underpowered. But that is available as well. So a lot of new toys to play with. And you do start in Skaven Blight on Mortal Empires, which is, you know, a very historic place for Skaven. And it's a really cool place on the map as well. Because there are a lot of different ways you can start moving. Like, it's not immediately clear where you want to go.
and make the...
There's a pretty strong drive to try to go north into Bretonia early, and that's what we'll probably end up doing, but there are some other options if you want to go there. So, yeah, first episode, let's just go over some of these new systems here just really quickly, and we will try to get into a good fight here. Okay. So let's start with the basic stuff with Skaven. You have this food meter here, and whenever you win battles, then you will have the option of getting some food. You'll get some food from naturally winning the battle, but then you'll have other scenarios where you could get food as well as a trade-off for other things. And as your food goes up, eventually you get like really nice bonuses. Upkeep reduction, growth, public order, 10 leadership for everybody is pretty amazing. Local recruitment capacity, so it's obviously really, really good as that goes up. As it goes down, it gets really bad. Negative growth, negative rating, public order minus 10 leadership. All that stuff gets really bad. So obviously you want to get it up to good, but there are several things that can cost you food as well. So every town that you have is going to cost you 1 food per turn, and every army that you have is going to cost you 1 food per turn. So you want to try to operate with as few armies as possible whenever you can. And there are other things that cost food as well. So for example, the Forbidden Workshop here, a lot of these upgrades, which we'll talk about here in just a second, do end up costing you some food if you want to upgrade them, so 25 food. And it's a little awkward because this is a percentage of your total food, and every time you take a town, then it gives you 5 more food capacity. Most towns give you 5 more food capacities, but that's not how much you're earning per turn. So that means that you have to have, how do I describe that? As the capacity goes up, you need to have more growth, and it's going to take you longer to move the percentage needle up. So, if you have 1,000 total food capacity and you just gained 50 food from a battle, that's only going to move the needle up 5% on your food meter, right? Versus if you only have 100 food capacity and you win 50 food from a battle, that's going to move your food meter up by 50, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. If you fall behind on food and you start to get larger capacity without getting extra food income, then that can really hurt you, and it can make it difficult to dig your way out of that hole. However, if you build up a huge stockpile and you get a larger capacity, then you can afford to take a few hits on food and still maintain a high percentage. So it becomes kind of interesting to try to micromanage that. And let's go ahead and just break out the workshop here, just to kind of show you how this works. Now, this is unique to Ikkit. No other faction or no other Skaven ward is going to have access to this workshop. And it gives you a lot of really good potential upgrades. Now, there are different levels to this workshop, so you can get up to level 4, and there are certain tasks you have to complete to level it up. So, right here, I need to kill 1,000 units in battle. That's just total, I think, in all of your battles. It doesn't have to be in one battle. Ensure the following building has been constructed. A warp tractor beam. I think that is the tier 2 here. Yes, so you have to build this building as part of it. And then use a Doom Rocket in battle. So you got to blow stuff up, use the Doom Rocket. It gives you additional upgrades, and you get +5 warp fuel canisters, which is a currency that you use to get these upgrades. So then that'll take you up to level 2, then it'll tell you what the level 2 are. So every time you go up, you can get more stuff. So right now, these are options that I could do, and then I need level 2 for these, level 3 for these, and then level 4 for the very bottom one down here. And as you get these upgrades, each upgrade that you get will move up this bar for that specific tree. So for the Doomflayer tree, the Doom Wheel tree, the Weapon Team tree. Every time you upgrade anything in there, then you start to get special stuff. So sometimes you get special items like this. The very last one is almost always a special Regiment of Renown that you can hire. And then sometimes you get some other stuff, like this one, Simply Kit. So this one right here, that's just for everybody, faction-wide, I believe. It does say rare, so that might be an item. Not sure. This one has 3 different Regiments of Renown and a Sniper Cape. But yeah, so I guess you can get like some items sometimes. This lowers the cost of Warp Lightning upgrades, so it can lower some magic costs. So you have a lot of like interesting things. You have to kind of choose how you want to specialize. You only have a certain percentage chance of getting these warp fuels, so you can do it through hero actions, missions, upgrading, or you can discover it in battle at a fairly lower percentage. Then you spend it on different things, and it costs food, like I mentioned before. So especially early on in the game, that's going to be rough. You need to be very, very careful upgrading this because you're not going to have a huge bounty of food. And one of your #1 priorities when you're playing should be to max out that food cap and try to keep it there as much as you can, because those faction-wide buffs are tremendous. Okay, so the Doom... I'm not going to go through all of these right now. I'll just go through a couple of the ones that I think would be most worth considering working towards. And then as we go through the campaign, then we'll revisit it, you know, periodically and take a look at what's available and kind of where we might want to go. Doom Whales in general are okay. They're good anti-infantry units. They're heavily armored, which is nice. Typically, Skaven don't have a huge problem with infantry, like big infantry blobs, but this can be pretty nice at fighting other anti-infantry units that are heavily armored. So like your great swords, like your sword masters of Hoeth and stuff like that, because they're not going to get a bonus because these aren't infantry, but these get a bonus against them. So that's a pretty good thing there. Now this is handy. This is all characters get -4 for upgraded Scorch, and Scorch, a lot of magic has been changed on SFO. A lot of it has been nerfed pretty hard. We're gonna see how hard Plague magic has been nerfed. That historically was the best magic, but they have shifted around Magic of Ruin a little bit, and especially with some of these upgrades like the -4 cost for all characters on Scorch could be pretty good, because Ruin magic was all right. It was just that Plague magic was always kind of better, but we'll see. And then this one can give you some extra winds of magic. This one gives you +8 versus infantry, so that's going to be very strong. Double down on your anti-infantry. And then this one right here, faction-wide, is going to give you +10% weapon strength and +10 melee against all kinds of units. So this would obviously be the #1 thing that you want to get, especially early on. And then you can combine it with this one, and that would give you a total of +18 against melee against infantry. And I think they already get a pretty good chunk, so they're going to be able to shred through some infantry with that. So those are kind of the early ones that I would think about there. And Doomflayers are like pretty good units. They require you to get to tier 4. I think we start off with one in our army, but usually they're pretty expensive and pretty high tier. Doom Wheels, we're not going to get these for quite a while. They are tier 5, so we'll just kind of skip those for now. I think in general they are a little overcosted. They just don't do enough. They may have buffed them a little bit in SFO, and they're certainly super cool. Like, you know, we might try one out just for fun, but when I've tried them in the past, I've been a little underwhelmed with how they perform. They're just kind of weird. Like, they do have a decent charge bonus. They shoot some lightning out. But who knows? Maybe some of these changes could be useful. Well, I didn't realize that it also gives -2 warp lightning as well. I hadn't read that. So you can get up to -6. Or no, that one's warp lightning, not... Sorry. It's warp lightning, not the breath attack. So that's another thing for Ruin Magic that can get upgraded. And you can get that as well to get down to -4 warp lightning. So it might be worth getting a couple of the upgrades on that just for the warp lightning stuff. We'll see. But this is your bread and butter. This is the big ticket. This is where you almost always want to start. Not only because Ikkit specializes in the weapons teams, so you get all sorts of other bonuses, but because these are just the best types of units in the game, typically, for a lot of Skaven armies. And there are some very big upgrades here. So these Warplock Jezzails are like snipers. They're really long range. They are extremely good against lords and large units because they're usually pretty accurate for something that's that far away, as you would expect a sniper to be. But they're also just pretty decent at just infantry units in general. So this gives them 25% armor-piercing damage. Most of their attack is armor-piercing, so that is huge, as long as they're outside of 70 range. So that's going to be most of the time. You get the stalk and resistances, that's not so great. But then this one is another 25% armor-piercing damage. That's 50% armor-piercing damage on these guys if they're outside of range, and you get 10% extra range. So that is tremendous. Now, this requires a level 3 workshop, so it's going to take a while to get that, but fairly early on, this is definitely something we'll be interested in with the scopes. The Rattling Guns, reload time for the Rattling Guns, that's very useful. That allows them to fire faster. They already fire pretty fast. It's basically a machine gun, but that can be useful. Missile damage, 20% obviously is going to be huge. And then this one right here, basically they can never run out of ammo, is going to be pretty massive as well. Now, you used to be able to get that super early on, So they have nerfed that on SFO, and rightly so. It's really, really strong. That you can just basically just spam, machine gun them down and never run out of ammo. So they not only nerfed it because it takes tier 3 to get there, but you can only use that refill 10 times. So, I mean, that's almost infinite in most fights, but they're still going to be pretty good. You don't want, to overload on them too much, but they are really nice. We'll talk about them more specifically as units here in a second. Oh, I didn't even notice they had these down here. I didn't scroll down when I was scouting for this. I was kind of sad they didn't have anything for Globadiers or the Mortars, but they do. Oh my god. It's awesome. And then the Warp Fire Throwers. These are some of my favorites. Really awesome, flamethrower units, but unfortunately most flamethrower units are just not that great because they can't use it in melee combat, and they're often really short range. And they are line of sight units. So what that means is if there's trees or hills or some other terrain issues, they have a hard time firing. Giselles have a little bit of an arcing shot, but they kind of have a hard time with hills as well, and so do Rattling Guns. So certain terrain, you gotta, kind of be aware of that. But yeah, 10% missile damage, obviously good. Fire resistance armors, whatever. And then tier 3, you get increased range and anti-large. So I don't know how much anti-large, we'll see. But I mean, if they can flame down horses in particular, that would be really nice against Bretonnia. Although horses are obviously really going to be fast-moving creatures that will get on top of them pretty quickly. So they're okay. We'll probably, try to have one for fun for a good chunk of the campaign. They are very good against fodder units early on, against other Skaven or Empire units that aren't going to have a lot of armor. They are pretty good. Now, they are better than the dwarf ones, I think, because they do have a really nice debuff whenever they flame stuff. It, lowers their leadership and armor and things like that. And they're faster, so they can reposition. If you have the flank secured, so you're not going to be hit by cavalry or whatever, you can walk around and flank with these and just shoot it straight down the line, and that'll just completely obliterate people. But positioning can be a problem if you do that, because if they get engaged on, they can get torn up really quickly. So you got to be careful with that, but just starting off while they're walking in with a bunch of infantry, just getting, 1 or 2 shots off with these guys can be pretty devastating. Then the Warp Grinders are the new units. These are just some drill type of units that can take down walls. They do a ton of armor-piercing damage. I mean, I haven't played with them yet, but they look like they definitely have the potential to be OP. They do 100% armor-piercing damage. They have high armor, and this gives them 30 extra melee attack, which is disgusting. They're going to do so much damage. So you don't want them to frontline, because they do have a lot lower HP than a lot of other units. They do have nice armor, but they do have low HP. But if you can get these things around into the back and to flank with them, they look like they'll carve some stuff up. So we'll see. That definitely looks good. But then this right here, it's just straight up unbreakable and 50% damage resistance. Maybe they can tank with 100 armor and 50% damage resistance when you get those. And then this gives them replenishment on top of that. So I don't know. This looks like really has the potential to be OP if they can face tank and do that much damage. We'll see. It'll definitely be a nice addition to help us tear down walls a little bit faster so we don't have to waste ammunition from our artillery units. Then we've got the Poison Wind Mortars. Haven't used these yet, but mortars are always good. That nice high arcing shot is great for sieges, great for getting around hills. I'm always a huge fan of high arcing shot units. So that's going to be really handy. Let's see. Projectiles cause damage over time and reduce leadership. Okay, that's legit. And then 20% extra range. Yeah. So I suspect these are going to be very strong units, and these look like good upgrades. And then finally, the OG weapons team units here, back when there wasn't such a thing as the drills or the mortars or the Giselles or all this other stuff. It just used to be kind of the warp fire throwers and the bombardiers. So these historically have been very strong. They basically just throw gas grenades. So they're pretty short range. They do a ton of damage. They just annihilate units, especially the purple ones have a bigger spread. So they can completely crush stuff, and they are great on sieges for throwing stuff onto the ramparts. All those units that are up there, they just have the perfect arc to get that. So they can, totally knock things off of that really easily. Okay, so bonus versus large. Okay, not amazing. Usually you want to use them against clumped up infantry, but could be good against cavalry. You could also throw these if your units are engaged in combat, because they're pretty accurate, because they're closer range and they're just throwing it. So sometimes it's dangerous to like fire your catapult into your own units, for example, or to fire something like a flamethrower into your own units, or a machine gun. You're going to get some friendly fire. But with these, a lot of times, they can throw it straight over top of your own guys and still be very effective against the enemy without causing too many friendly fire kills. Okay, you get missile damage here, and then this is armor, melee attack. Okay, kind of weird, but I mean, they're terrible in melee, but I guess it's there. And then causes fear. That's not going to matter. So that third one's not that great. When it says damage, that means melee damage, I guess. So, yeah, that's pretty bad, the third one, but the first two are good. And then the Doom Rockets here, you can just find some way. You can build a Doom Rocket. It costs 4 canisters and 25s. That's a lot. That's 2 upgrades worth of canisters if you want to do that by comparison. So the nuke is extremely powerful, but it is very expensive. And you can upgrade to make your nukes even better. So additional damage over time. The chemical warheads could be good, especially later on. 25% to basically get an extra nuke when you build one. This one's better, though. 100% to get warp fuel, because it's guaranteed that you're going to be able to get 1 warp fuel, whereas this is kind of, you're rolling the dice a little bit more. And those are probably the ones that you want to end up getting. The capacity is not going to be an issue. I don't think I'm going to want to stockpile more than 5, although I guess it's possible. Okay, let's get into a fight here. I know I've talked enough at the beginning. I do want to mix in some fights, and then I'll tell you about all the other systems here in a second. But let's go ahead and get this going. So we'll attack just Tabaros. It's really close. So we want to attack them first. Okay, so we're just going to encircle. Usually you want to attack, encircle first, and then move your heroes in there so that it doesn't take any movement speed away from your main army. Okay, so we're going to go with that. And I am going to walk you through all the other stuff, too. I'm just trying to mix in some fighting, so I'm not just talking for, you know, an hour straight for the first episode. Okay. And we want to fight this. We could auto it, but we're going to be able to absolutely slaughter them, and we want to get the highest level victory that we can early on. So we don't want to take casualties, and that does level up your ward faster. If you get a decisive victory, it levels it up. It levels up your ward faster than close victory. So we'll go ahead and fight it. Now you can use your food to hire Menace from Below, which allows you to summon clan rats anywhere on the map. Now they do degrade over time, but that can be really good for just swarming people, getting some flanks on people, dealing with artillery on the back line. So it's a really nice trait. But we're not going to need it here, so we'll just go ahead and fight it. And the way that the Menace from Below works is if a place is heavily contaminated with Skaven corruption, you get free uses of that without using food. So if a place is like ultra corrupt, you might get 4 or 5 uses of Menace from Below in a battle for free without using food. And that would cause attrition to anyone in your property, but that also causes public order problems for you whenever it's too corrupt. So you kind of, Skaven's really interesting in many respects, but also in terms of their corruption, because you kind of like, there are situations where you both want corruption and you don't want corruption. It's not always like, get maximum corruption at all times, you know, like vampire counts or chaos or whatever. Because if you have less corruption, it dramatically improves your public order. But if you have more corruption, then it makes it more difficult for people to move around in your territory, and it gives you free uses of Menace from Below. So it's a very good defensive tool for protecting your towns, potentially, because your garrisons are not going to be that good. Okay. So we've got the Rattling Guns here. We've got the Jezzails here. I guess we'll make these 2. Now, microing with Skaven can be very tricky because even the weapons teams function in, you know, very different ways depending on what the team is and how you want to use it. And then we'll put Ikkit up here as well. So you obviously do not want to put anything in front of the machine guns because they will cause a lot of friendly fire to your own units, as you would expect. And then just the stats on these, and you know, we'll go over the units more after this battle. But you have this warp upgrade. I don't think you can do it at the start of a fight. You have to wait 2 minutes before you can Doom Rocket as well, so you can't just immediately Doom Rocket somebody, like right when the fight starts. So you'll probably use those mostly on sieges. But this, you have a warp overcharge. All of the weapons team units are going to have this to where it causes some damage to you, but you get to do more damage overall, is what happens with that one. This Warp Overcharge hurts your accuracy, causes damage to self, but you fire twice as fast, basically. This one, damage to self, less armor, but causes armor piercing, extra armor piercing damage. So, if it doesn't kill individual entity units, then you will heal to full at the end. Rattling Gun. So we'll see. Is this accuracy? It's range. Okay, we'll probably use that. You do fire slower, but we'll try it out. Seeing how much damage. Okay, so it does the damage to you basically instantly. So that's not like a huge amount, but
Your desire, scampering, Ikkit claw for Skaven blight.
Dang, that does have some nice range to it, though. I want to get the swords because those are going to be better in combat. I'm trying to remember the exact delay on it. Not bad.
Rattling gun. Attack! As planned. Wield the winds.
So he has Warp Lightning also. So we'll go ahead and just throw a couple of those there.
Unleash war hell. Where the things? At once. Scary, yes. Slay strong. Yes. We move. Advance, retreat, and skitter. Doom. Now we all obey. Our tail's yours. Glorious warfare. Yes, master. Scary. We obey. Forward, backwards.
There we go. Virtually flawless victory. Did take, we maybe lost one Rattling Gun. Now they're all going to die because it's a town, so we'll just go ahead and end that. So we'll see how many we actually lost. So we lost one. So they took damage, but as long as the entities don't die, then it heals to full at the end of a fight. So sometimes you can see, it'll look like something's at half health, and then you end the battle and it's almost all the way healed. It's because all of your units are at close to 50% health, but none of them have actually died. So some of the ways that you injure yourself here with these warp drives things, as long as your units don't get actually attacked, I don't think it'll kill the entities. It just does damage to them over time. So they will heal back to full at the end of the fight. So that can be pretty handy. Except for individual entity units. So if it's like a single hero or something, they do not heal back to full. So we got 10 food right there for winning that fight. Decisively. We get some loot off of it. Got a little weapon. And we did level up. If you don't get the decisive victory, I don't think you level up there. If you just get a close victory. And if you auto-resolve it, I think it's close. Okay, so you have some options here. You can raise it, which is terrible. You almost never want to raise it unless you just... I don't know. There's extremely limited cases where you want to do that. If you sack it and then occupy it, it's going to knock everything down to tier 1. It always goes down to tier 1, but it's going to severely damage the buildings as well. So a lot of times, if you have enough movement, the sack and occupy can be a good option to pick out some extra money. But because this has a port on it, if I do that, it's going to completely like crush the port. And I'm going to have to repair it, which is probably going to cost more than like the 500 gold differential here. So the other option, you have to loot and occupy. You cannot peacefully occupy. So that means that public order is an issue whenever you're taking new territories. It's always going to be an issue, which makes sense. It's Skaven. Like they're, they're not known for like having great discipline and public order a lot of times. But you can occupy it at level 1, or you can pay 20 food and upgrade it to higher levels. So if you want to take something and immediately have it level 3, it doesn't come with any buildings, I don't think. Actually, it might come with buildings. If the town was already level 3, and you occupy it at level 3, you might get some buildings. Not 100% about that. We'll have to see in the future, but it does cost you a tremendous amount of food to do that, so you only want to do that in like really emergency situations where it's like a landmark building or a landmark territory where you're going to get something special by leveling it up really high, or you want it to be like a huge like main command base where you're going to like level it up and try to get some higher tier units. But most of the time you just want to get it level 1. You have really high growth a lot of times as Skaven, especially once you start getting some technologies and you have plentiful food. And their buildings to upgrade it are very cheap as well. So usually it's not worth it unless you absolutely 100% need an upgrade immediately. It's not going to be worth. And the Under Empire is a cool option. I know that Mozzie was really a big fan. One of the sponsors of the campaign is really a big fan of the Under Empire. What that does is basically you establish an Under Empire there, but they get to keep the property. And there's a lot of stuff you can do with Under Empire, which we'll talk about in a minute. But basically, you can use it to get extra income, extra food. There's a lot of extra stuff you can get with it. But you don't want to do that on places that you're going to occupy, because whenever you occupy it, it destroys the Under Empire. So you only want to do that in places where you're not going to immediately think about occupying it. Okay, so we're just going to loot and occupy here. The boring version. Now, you can also establish Under Empire by using your Warlock can do that as one of his commands. Now, it is expensive if he does it. So, for instance, if we look here, it would cost 1,200 gold, but it does give you the Under Empire. Now, there is a cooldown on it. I think it's like a 15-turn cooldown, so you can't do it a ton. And, you know, for now, I do want to establish it, but at the same time, I need to get him leveled up, and I need him to win these fights. Some of these early fights can be kind of tricky. So we're going to keep him with us.
Science, sorcery.
You can do a rite as well. What do I have to do with this? Research 3 techs. So you can perform a rite and get this special Doom Engineer who runs over and creates the underway, but you get a special like workshop, which gives you extra perks. So you really want to use this every time that you can to establish the underway. Or you can cause a huge earthquake, which kind of sucks. You pretty much always want to do the underway. And then some of the other rights that we have here, after expansionist planning, then we can get pay 3,000 gold for 5 turns of food, growth, public order, and construction costs. That's really good. You want to use that quite a bit. Diplomatic relations with Skaven. Once you get rank 7, minus 13% upkeep for all units for 13 turns. This Clan Scryerstone lowers magic resist on enemies. That's very good if you're fighting against dwarves, for example. That can make them a lot more susceptible to your magic. So really good overall there. And then the plague thing, I don't use it that much. Like, it's cool if you want to mess with people that you're not going to occupy once again, because if you plague a town and then you go occupy it, your town's going to be plagued. Your army might get plagued. So I really don't use that one that much. But it's mostly just for kind of trolling people a lot of times. Or if you just want to play the long game with heroes, I guess you can do that. But the other 3 are really fantastic. He has some of the better rights, I think, above average. There are some better ones out there, but above average rights. And then as far as his technologies go, he's a really good lord in general. Not only just because of his campaign stuff, but he's decent at fighting. He's anti-large, 30 anti-large, which is very nice going against Bretonnia and things like that, because you don't really have awesome anti-large as Skaven. You do have your Storm Vermin with halberds and stuff like that, but that can be one of their potential problems, is fighting like heavily armored elite cav. So he's a pretty good old fighter. He has magic damage and flaming attacks. Now, lowering someone's magic resist by a ton, I don't know if they can go negative with the Clan Scryerstone. With that, we'll have to see if they can go into negative territory, but that would actually increase the amount of damage his attacks do because they're considered magic. So he does reduce damage to normal dwarfs because his attacks are magical, but it bypasses physical resist, and it could potentially do extra damage if you lower their magic resistance. So pretty handy old fighter. He does have this Blast Orb, which I used in the last fight, which is like a free Vortex spell that you can cast, which is pretty strong, especially against unarmored units. And so some of these at rank 10, we'll talk about those later, but you have a couple of good things. Your Warlock Masters get extra loyalty, and Warlock Engineers, you get extra capacity for those. Extra chance to get Warp Fuel after battle, which is really nice. I don't know what the base chance is. It's like maybe a 25% chance. That's extremely good for getting more fuel. And then Doomflayer stuff and extra, the Brass Orb does more damage, which is handy. Then he has some magic here, so you can do Warp Lightning into Scorch, which is pretty strong magic overall. And like you saw in the workshop, you can actually get this lowered even more. You can get 4 costs reduced down to 10, which is nice. And then Death Frenzy is pretty good later on in the game. It only costs 12, which is really cheap compared to a lot of magic these days. It only lasts 25 seconds, but it gives 25 extra melee attack, weapon damage, leadership, all that stuff, so that can be good. We're not going to care that much. We're just going to blow stuff up. So Death Frenzy, if you were going for like a heavier Storm Vermin build or something like that, maybe you'd get that. Or if you're going for like the Eshin Triads or Assassin units, maybe. And we'll get some of those, but they did add a new spell in here, Flensing Ruin, which I haven't used that before, but it looks like it's direct damage. It can't miss. You just cast it on people. It's 30 effect range, so it can affect multiple units. Lasts over 45 seconds and like shreds their armor, magic resist, all of that. So that would be very good against heavily elite units like Chaos Chosen or something like that. But it is 30 magic, so it's ultra expensive. Crack's Call is a really strong wind spell, but it's 25 magic. So his magic's okay. It's not insane, but it's alright. You can get some decent stuff here if you want to increase his ability to fight. I tend to not get that too much. But some of the main things that you do want to get that are pretty good, he does get unlimited power here, which is like greatly increasing things. But some of the early stuff in the red, you almost always want to get Pack Leader. It's great for your Clan Rat units, which are going to kind of be your bread and butter units. 8 extra melee attack, 6 leadership. And then you have some choices here. Blast Master is for weapons team units and reload reduction for weapon team units. So that is clearly going to be something that's really important. And then the engineering skill can be really strong for Doom Wheels, Plague Claw Catapults, and Warp Lightning Cannons. Now, Plague Claw Catapults are still going to be extremely strong, so it's worth considering those because they're just really long range and they have a huge sort of blast radius. So you still want those because weapons teams aren't going to be that long, but the Blast Master weapon team stuff is definitely going to be something that you want to get early on. And then down here, just getting your Root Marcher. Ancient Cunning is extremely important. 30% extra ambush chance is huge. And then you can kind of decide. Looter can be pretty good. You do have to loot every settlement you sack and loot, so that is going to be pretty handy. And then getting down to Lightning Strike, Quartermaster, and Feared and Renowned, or Renowned and Feared. It's kind of your bread and butter standard that you get with most factions. And that right there, the post-battle loot and getting extra magical items can be really handy too. So they have quite a few good options. I think it's kind of up in the air whether I want to do Pack Master or Blast Master. So the base leadership's 50 on them. The leadership's the most important thing early on, so they don't run. And I'm going to buy... Let's get some Skaven Slaves. You can't get a ton of them. We can get a couple here. He's a little more straightforward, this one here. You just want to go Standardized Drill, Reload Time, and then Triangulation. X for all missile units, including weapons teams. Really good. Extra ammo for everybody. You can upgrade his armor. And like he's got some pretty good stuff. 10% weapon damage, magical attacks, and 15 melee attack for 2 points. Is pretty strong. He's one of the strongest heroes in the game. Ballistics calibration, and then you can get extra range for missile units, and extra explosion radius and damage for missile units. So he's just really, really awesome for all the weapons team units. He's an okay fighter. He's got 100 armor, kind of low on the health. And then he even has like some of his secondary stuff is okay, like extra research rate. And then siege defense stuff, which is not like insane, but hero cost by 20%. That's really good when you're going to be setting up a bunch of labs potentially with him. and then he can also increase mobility to make your army move a lot faster. So just a ton of really good stuff going on with him. So he's one of my favorite heroes in the game. Okay, Ikkit Claw. I guess the safest thing is just to go probably Inspiring Presence. And I'm just thinking maybe just the weapons team. I don't know. We're not going to run out of ammo as much. I do need the leadership from these guys, but I believe this also applies to the Poison Wind Globadiers. Because we can use some slaves as pack leader, but I guess let's go with pack leader. We're going to get them both anyways. It's like, these are going to do more damage. Well, you know what? I think I'm just going to go... I'm going to go with the damage. Just because, like, these are going to be fodder units anyways. We will get this eventually, but we might just go with the damage and go into the blue. That might be a mistake in terms of leadership, but... Okay, so we have to repair the port anyways for 280. Then as far as our main building goes... you don't need to upgrade these immediately, because if you start getting the weapons team stuff, then you can automatically just get the clan rats. You aren't going to have them with the shields, but whatever, it's fine. You can actually hire all the clan rats with shields anyways right here off of just your little tier 1, so you don't need this. That's only if you want to get to Storm Vermin, which we're not going to get until much later in the game. So the best stuff, obviously, you want to be going for is this tractor thing. You have to get that anyways for the upgrades. And it does let you hire these things at tier 3, when typically they'd be tier 4 required. So that does let you skip the curve a little bit. You still do have to have this cavern, which is handy. Wow, really? They give you virulent plans for this. Okay. That's good, because before, I'm almost positive that you had to get over here the Plague Monks in order to get virulent plans, which is kind of out of your way. Now, we're going to want this anyways to get a Plague Priest, I think. I mean, maybe we can just deal with the Warplock Engineers, kind of our caster, if we want to. But that's even less of a reason to go over here, because before you at least had to get a good technology for this, but maybe not. So some of your core units here, like obviously you want the weapons team. We talked about those a little bit. Then you've got your Globadiers here, so they do like 122, and there's 32 of them, so 122 with a pretty good splash radius, pretty heavy armor-piercing damage, 22 ammo, 100 range, so these are nice. Now, they did lower the armor significantly on these. They used to have 100 armor. Now, they added a new kind of poison to this one. This one's anti-large, so this is 100 anti-large. They do 222 damage against like cavalry and things like that. Lords that are on mounts, so these guys can totally melt some people. And they have this warp gas, 30 seconds, lowers weapon damage, miscast chance, and all of that, lowers armor, does not affect allies. That's actually really good. You definitely want one of those, if for no other reason than to put that debuff on people. And then this one doesn't have any debuff that you put on them. It is magical ammo, which does get through physical resist, which is nice, but... your other one, this Warp Grinder. Now, this is the new weapon team that can attack walls. So they only have 5,000 health, but they do have 100 armor. 35 melee attacks. So not insane, but if you get that plus 30, that could be pretty good. Weapon, 100% armor piercing, 100 weapon damage. So that could be good. And then you also have several abilities on them. Warp Quake does damage. 50 range, which is huge, does constant physical damage. There's no like magic cost to that. It just works. So that looks like that has the potential to be very strong. We'll see. I haven't used them before. And then Seismic Snare, just being able to root people. Now it doesn't have, it's only around you within 40 meters. So it doesn't have like huge ability to snare a lot of things because you're not very fast. So it's not quite like Net of Amantok, but it's pretty close. If units are thinking about charge cycling you or running away or whatever, that could be handy. So they're pretty decent. We could check them out. They are siege attackers, obviously, too, at tier 2, which is really nice. The Skaven are very good on sieges. And then the other unit is, the new unit, is this Poison Wind Mortar. So good range at 250. Has that nice high arcing shot. Deals 2 damage to a max of 40 entities. Wow, that is actually really huge, because most of the time lethal poison only affects like 4 or 5 entities per. So that is a massive amount of damage. Holy crap. It's 80 damage per second, basically. So that's a lot of damage. They have less ammo. And you might wonder, well, why would you get these over something like the Plague Claw Catapults, which are similar but do have way more range? Well, there's only 8 Plague Claw Catapults in a stack, and there are 16 of these, so there's twice as many of these. Now, they do less damage overall. We'll have to see how their arcing shot is. That's actually not quite as much damage as I thought they were going to do. 67's a bit on the low end, because these, do 122, and there's twice as many of them in a stack. So they do like twice the damage, and there's twice as many. So we'll see. We'll definitely try them out. They do have longer range, so they could be pretty handy. As far as some of the other units, talked about the catapult, long range, bread and butter, great unit. We have to get this in order to get the weapons burrow anyways, and we do want to get as many engineers online as we can so we can create more labs. So Doomflayers, or Undercities rather. Doomflayers, really good anti-infantry, as we said before, heavily armored, pretty decent HP, get 25 bonus versus infantry. They can be kind of strong. They're expensive, but they can be good. Historically, Warp Lightning Cannon's pretty bad. It's a straight line shot. It doesn't arc, so it has a problem with hills. It's borderline worthless on sieges, other than taking out siege towers. So, you probably won't see that too much. Doomwheel, mentioned that before. Nice armor, kind of a goofy unit that's really fun to use, but overall not too terribly effective, but we may use it in the future just for fun. We'll see. The Plague Monks, you don't want to use these. If you have Skrulk, these could be good. If we confederate with Skrulk, we might get some of them. But they're just your standard kind of Berserker unit. No armor, unbreakable, pretty good in melee combat, but definitely melt to missile fire and are not very good frontline units. They're kind of like flankers. Plague Priest can be good. Censer Bear is just upgraded of the first version. These are definitely stronger, but they're more expensive. As far as these go, Rat Ogres, you just really shouldn't be getting these in 2020 most of the time. When the game very first came out, the first Skaven campaign I did, they are very good against Lizardmen early on, because Lizardmen aren't like, the catapults are not super amazing against Lizardmen because they have a bunch of like large units and their units have a lot of health and there aren't a lot of entities. But there's so many different weapons teams now that are so strong in different situations. You pretty much have a weapons team for everything. So you really don't need these. These have also been nerfed, I'm pretty sure. They are on the expensive side. They do have a lot of HP. They do have a pretty good charge, but in general, really low melee defense, really low armor. They can't stick in combat for very long. They don't have a lot of utility. They have low leadership. So you really don't want to be getting the Rat Ogres these days. Although, once again, in the past, they were good. These days, not so much. The Hellpit Abomination, this is a really good late-game tank unit. And it's very good, like, anti-large, too. So against dragons and things like that, this can be pretty strong against cavalry. So we will be interested in getting, a couple of these late game. And they're pretty cheap for, like, an in-game unit that's, like, that strong. Only 544 is good. Versus a lot of dragons are, like, 1,000 upkeep. And he can go toe-to-toe with the dragons. He obviously doesn't fly, and he doesn't have the breath attack. But he does regenerate. He's pretty good for his cost. He's pretty good. This is a special SFO unit, Black 13. I've never used this before, but obviously looks really strong. It's like a special assassin type of unit. There's only 13 of them in a stack, but they do 250 damage each. That's like hero level damage, but there's 13 in a stack. So they just do like insane damage. Very, very good at taking down enemy lords or single entity units. But they require this special building, which is really expensive. But nevertheless, we'll definitely want to try them out. And then you have the last couple ones, your Storm Vermin. They're okay, for the cost. They have a lot of HP. They have good armor. They're some of the best infantry you can get. The problem is they just don't stack up that well against other enemy infantry. So you're better off just putting your money in fodder units like Clan Rats and then spending your big money on your weapons teams. Unless you're just like absurdly rich and you're just trying to make a death stack, which, we might do that eventually. You're better off spending your money elsewhere, unless you just have a ton of it. Okay, and then kind of these specialty units here. I don't think these are that great. If you have Snitch, they do get better because they do a lot more armor-piercing damage. He gives them, like, warp-infused weapons. So they're a little bit better there, but in general, They either have low ammo, like this one only has 6 ammo, or they just don't do enough damage to justify their cost. 23 is okay, but you already have such crazy range damage with your weapons teams. There's really just no reason to get these. They can skirmish, so they can kite back and run, and, you know, they have some utility to them. Maybe against, like, heavy flying units, maybe, but in general, they're going to be on the weak side. You just get upgraded versions of those with poison. The assassin is one of the weaker heroes in the game. He does have replenished troops. He is cheap, so he does have that going for him. And he does have a nice debuff to help you kill enemy lords. So he's all right. He just doesn't provide nearly the same kind of utility that the engineer provides. But he's okay. He's okay, but we probably won't get him until later. And then you get an Eshin Sorcerer. So this is the new magic kind of guy. He can damage walls, which is really nice. Who else damages walls with Skaven? Do they even have anyone that damages walls? Let's see. Okay, so our Plague Priest damages walls, but we may or may not get him. We'll see. So the fact that he damages walls does make me interested in him. What that means is that you come in and the enemy already has their walls down for you, so you don't even have to worry about drilling through them. So that's an extremely powerful effect. So it's possible we might try him out. He does have some magic too, so maybe he's better than the Plague Priest these days, because the Plague magic has been nerfed quite a bit. Now, those weapon costs are not accurate. Like, they didn't change the tooltips on this, so it's going to be more expensive once you actually get them. Causes no damage, but, like, screws up the enemy, so pushes them away. It's a vortex, though. So, I mean, I guess, what? Okay, 150 meters. It doesn't do damage, but I guess it can disrupt formation and keep people from walking through certain choke points, maybe. So I could see, like, on a river crossing map or something, you could throw this in the middle of the little place, and then just keep firing on them with all of your weapons teams, and they wouldn't be able to walk through it. So there might be a couple of spots where that could be good. Magic Missiles is usually bad. Skitter Leap is not great for the kind of units we're going to be using. Moderate magic damage can disrupt. Lowers leadership. Maybe. We'll see. He doesn't strike me as someone who's going to be amazing, but I haven't used him. We'll check him out. The Gutter Runners, or the Death Runners, can be good for running people down, cleaning stuff up. And the problem is, like, these Doom Flayers are also really good at that, and they have a lot more armor and, like, upgrades from the workshop and things like that. So we may not get the Death Runners. It's possible. Applying this debuff is very nice. The minus 50% armor later on can be pretty good. But we'll see. And then these Eshin Triads, I'm not sure about these. My instinct is they're not as good as Storm Vermin. They're the same cost. Basically, they have, like, no armor, though. They do have this debuff, which is pretty crazy, though. The minus 40% weapon damage and minus 40% armor. So that is really, really good for adding some extra defense to your units effectively. Then they do have 10 anti-large, which is not as good as the Storm Vermin. They do also provide what this smoke out affects enemies, up to 2 enemies, lowers their melee attack even more. So lowering their damage by 40% and lowering their melee attack just means your units can kind of last forever against a lot of things. So it's an interesting utility unit. We'll see. And then we also have the Shattered Tower. Eventually, once we get up to tier 5, just huge buffs for your army. Extra public order and just a crazy amount of corruption everywhere. And then that gives extra tax rate, Lord Recruit rank, all kinds of other good stuff. But for now, what we want to go for is just upgrading the town. And then we just want to go for the growth. We just want to upgrade as fast as we can the growth to get to tier 3. So we can start getting some more of these weapons teams. Okay. And then as far as this goes, what did we need for the right? Expansionist planning. Because I am interested in doing that right. Efficient planning, expansionist. That's what I was going to get anyways. It does lower your public order and give you growth. Now, one thing you can do on SFO as well is if you take off the taxes, it does increase your public order by quite a bit, by 10. You don't get any money whatsoever from the province, which kind of sucks, but it also does give you 50 growth. So if you take off the taxes, everyone's celebrating, having fun, giving the growth. and there's a lot more public order. So that's going to be something you should consider doing a lot in certain towns that aren't giving you that much money that you want to grow up or that you want to use for food. Like you can use this minus tax rate, but also gives you food. So you could, if you take off the taxes anyways, doesn't matter, and you generate a lot of extra food. So there are some different ways you can play around with that also. Okay, well, let's go ahead and keep going. Sorry, I know there's a lot of talking in this episode, but there's so many things to talk about, to explain. Beastmen... I'm not sure. I might just want to try to kill them. Because, oh, actually, I do have a non-aggression with them. Okay, never mind. We're not killing them. Yeah, pretty much everyone's going to hate us until we find more Skaven. So, don't have to worry about diplomacy. Technology, you can't get techs until you get certain buildings. We are going to get Rattling Warrens next turn. And then what you want to get early on, typically what I think is strong, is getting the clan rat stuff. So 10 armor for clan rats are pretty good. Extra replenishment. Skaven slave stuff's alright. Post-battle loot. And then the strength in numbers, that's very good. The extra melee attack. And the sack. And food is scarce, the upkeep for clan rats. And making them expendable. So we want to get to that ASAP. Because what expendable means is if the unit dies, it doesn't give any leadership penalties to other people in your army. So usually if a unit dies or breaks, everyone else gets scared and they want to break too. But this basically just makes your units think, oh, those guys are expendable, they don't matter. So they don't really care if they die. So you want that. The Skaven slaves automatically have that, but the clan rats do not. So you definitely want that. Because your clan rats are going to die. They're replaceable. It's fine. And then eventually we do want to work our way over here to Volatile Plans. That's going to give us extra ammo for weapon team and missile infantry units, upkeep reduction for them, and extra unit capacity for bombardiers. And then this gives extra missile damage and range for weapons teams, and this gives recruit rank and capacity for weapons teams. So obviously really good stuff that we want to use. Doesn't require any other prerequisites, which is important to note. All you have to have is get to menace from below. Plus 10 leadership when you're sieging is awesome as well. So this is just a super good tree that you want early on, and you want to get to Volatile Plans. Another one that's very good is this Ruthless Plans. It does give you growth for all provinces, which is nice. Leadership, public order, loyalty for recruits, and campaign movement range. So this stuff is also something you really want to try to get fairly early on. And both of these are prerequisites to get record effective recipes, so you need those anyways to get to the really late game techs. So I would probably start here most of the time, get a few of these, then start getting these. These are less good. Now this might be better if you're going with a snitch campaign. You get like extra missile damage and things like that for a bunch of units. But for us, we're not going to be using a lot of those things, so it's not going to be that insane. The ambush chance is good. And then we get over here to distill poisons. You know, this stuff's not going to be that great for what we're doing, but the Plague Monks, if we do end up getting Skrulk, who's on the other end of the universe right now, that could be good, but you have to get this stuff anyways in order to start upgrading to kind of the plans within plans for bigger things over here. The ultimate plans and stuff like that. So that stuff is quite a ways off. These things give you some extra bonuses for assassins. Okay, you have to have this tech right here, eliminate the competition, in order to hire that Black 13 unit. I thought there was a tech for it, so it's going to be a little while before we can get them. But this is good for Death Runners, Storm Vermin, stuff like that. So, you know, later on we will get Storm Vermin to replace Clan Rats, but that's quite a ways off in the distance. So this stuff right here, ensure quality product, you can go over to Ingenious Plans, and that can also give you some upgrades for... let's see, catapults, storm vermin, and weapons team if you want that. And then this is catapults, and so that stuff's okay. It's not insane, but it's all right. And then these down here aren't attached to anything. But if we get storage caves, we can start getting these. Now that is -2 food per turn in exchange for 10 growth. So you got to be careful because these things do cost a lot of food. So that's kind of like mid-game, we might get some of those, but the extra movement range might be worth. I don't know if these other ones are going to be worth it or not. Loyal soldiers, probably not. But this thing for the growth and this one for the campaign movement range might be something we'd be interested in. Okay, So we got that. Got that. We don't want to do anything in the workshop, so we don't have enough food for it yet. Okay, I think that's good.
Where are my schematics?
And I don't know if we might try to see if we can get one more fight in. I do like to keep the episodes typically to 45 minutes to an hour, but because, you know, I talked a lot in this one, we'll see if we can get one more fight. We're probably going to try to go over and fight the, fight Bilbali. Then the basic strategy is typically you come through here, you grab this province, and you start working your way into Bretonnia. Moraliano will often try to backdoor you at some point. This place is extremely difficult to siege. That's sort of its thing. Its sort of special building there is that it just gets like a really, really good main town garrison. I think it might get cannons really early as well. So you really don't want to mess with Moraliano unless they just happen to step their army out of the town and you kill them outside the town until later. The Skaven are very good at sieges, but Moraliano is a beast early on. Okay, so we got the dominating scheme if we want that. We also got attack, so we're going to start working this. That costs a bit too much gold for us early on, I think. Yeah, we'll wait on that. The food is really nice. I mean, getting 50 food, wow, that is a huge deal. 25 growth, public order. Public order doesn't matter as much right now. But the extra food is huge because our total capacity is 110. I don't know. Maybe that is worth because we are getting 1,000 a turn, and that would take us up into 30 growth territory with all these other bonuses. 10 leadership's huge. Maybe we do go ahead and do that. Like, that sounds crazy, but the 10 food per turn is insane considering we have such a low capacity right now. And the growth is, like I said, growth is nice. I think I'm going to go ahead and try it. That food, man. Trying to get up to max food. Okay, and then with him, your different stances, you have raiding stance, which does give you food and some bonuses. You don't have crazy raids like some of the other factions out there, but it's pretty good at raiding. You have the underway system, which is very strong. Spread the rot. I don't think you'd use that much. It does cost you food, and it lowers their combat effectiveness a little bit if they fight you. I think do you have normal ambush stance? I think you might have normal ambush stance too. You just can't do it in a town. Then you have your standard kind of offensive and camp stance. It does give you a little bit of food, global recruitment, extra charge, and melee attack. Just good bonuses if they try to come at you. Okay, am I at war with them yet? Yeah, I'm at war with Estalia. Okay, so we got to be a little careful. They might step out on us, but
More warpstone. Now.
I think we'll just come out to here. Let me just make sure really quickly that we can't burrow under and get further. No. Okay. So we're just going to come out to, like, right here, I suppose. And then we're going to, like, burrow under and go for Bilbali and see if they come out on us after that. Okay, so Skaven Blight, upgrading. Growth's fine. So we're getting 175 growth a turn. Now, it's really important because we have great tier 5 awesome tier 5 towns, but it's just one town, right, in this province. That means that the growth is really tough because in most towns you'll have 3, or in most provinces you'll have 3 towns. That means you could put down, 3 Rattling Warrens. But for this one, the growth is going to be very difficult to come by because there are no other towns. And you have walls. When this campaign first came out, when I did an Ikkit Claw campaign, I guess years ago at this point, I guess, could I have hired clan rats? I don't think I can hire clan rats in this province. Maybe if I repaired the port, I maybe could have. I should have looked to see. I don't think we'll need them for the fight anyways, but it was bugged, and Skaven Blight did not have walls, so they could just very easily come at you. Okay, nice. I think nice. We'll see if it's nice. We'll see how we feel about that here in a second, saying nice. But, okay, let's go ahead and get this fight in here. We're going to go over time, but I want to give you guys a couple of good fights because I know I was talking a lot in this episode. Okay, so we're going to go down a little bit. We are getting a lot of food bonuses, but I don't want to goof around. I want to make sure we win this. And I think we can. But, yeah, we might want... Do I want to go 3 or 2? How greedy? I think 2 minutes from below. Okay, let's do it. And this one should be a little bit closer than the last one because we do actually have a lord we're going to have to fight here. And they have like some horses and some other stuff that'll be a little trickier. But let's go ahead and do it.
Close in on.
But it does actually have walls. It can defend now, because that was one of the really annoying things before, I believe. I mean, we'll see, unless it's still bugged. But before Miraliano could just roll over there and just attack you with no siege. It is very annoying for humans to run through that swamp, too, in Skaven Blight. And they usually take attrition when they do it, because there's lots of little, like, little tributaries and little streams and rivers and stuff. So it's extremely frustrating to try to run through that if you don't have the underway. Okay, so we're going to gamble. Try to get a little more magic, and we're not going to get any more magic.
Ikkit claw.
Okay.
Magic's ready. Clan rat.
Okay, so we want to stay out of the trees
Consoles come on.
if we can, because that's going to block our missile damage. And I think we'll do it without the warp stuff, just so we don't take the damage this time.
Council's command. Rattling gun. For the Vermintide. Warp lock.
Oops.
Yes, ales.
2.
For the Vermintide. Rattling gun.
Well, maybe we could do the warp thing. That's a lot more ammo. How much ammo do they have? I don't want to run out. They don't have that much ammo.
Warp lock. Yes, ales.
That's a lot of extra damage, although it's 25% slower firing. We do get extra range. I might do it with the Giselles.
Ikkit claw. Warlock engineer.
Now, he has a ranged attack too, right? Yeah, he has a ranged attack too. We'll put him on either side of these, and then the flayers can come up here.
Warp lock. Yes, ales. Council. Yes. Rattling gun. Now yours.
Okay, so we're going to come up here and just... You just want to kind of disrupt him a little bit. You know, just kind of throw him off.
Kill time. Rattling gun.
Yeah, so we do want to try to take out the horses first, because they can charge flank us.
Scouting. Yes. Yes. We move. At once. Our tail's yours. Clan Skyer. Ikkit claw. Fields the winds. Nasty things die.
Actually, they have shields. Let's see if we can snipe him out.
Kill contraptions at hand. Casting death pain. Ready, steady, doom. Warp lightning. Doom flyer. Advance retreat. Yes, master. Scurry. Horned rat. Will. Run. Chase. Shooting. Yes. Yes. Scream Rickato crack. Go. Run. Go. Scatter. Master Gil. Skaven. Yes. Yes. Our tail's yours. Forward. Backwards. Comply. Agree. Moving. At once.
I gotta try to micro these.
Scamper forward! March! Scurry, yes! Faster! Scurry! Doom flyer! Recoract! Doom flyer! Now! Move! Quick! Quick! At once! Once! Tail swan! Yes, superior one! Ikkit claw! Doom flyer! Slaves down! Ikkit claw! Warpstone magic! What orders? We serve! Advance retreat! And skitter! Quick mode!
try to charge in here. Okay. Got all that covered.
Move, move! Clan rats! Doomflayer! Our tail's yours! Yes, master! Scurry! Comply! Die! At once! What? Onwards! Ikkit claw! Clan rats! Good orders! Scurry, yes! Master of masters!
May have taken a little bit of friendly fire there on our Doom Flayers. It didn't kill any of them, but it definitely injured them a little bit, I think. Now these guys are going to get to run, so we do want to make sure that we run all of them down, potentially.
At once! Ready!
Get him out of here.
Rattling Guns! Attack! Charge! What? Our tail yours! Moving! Excellent! Yes, master. Hasten! Hurry! Ikkit claw!
Engineer took a bit more damage than I would like.
Skaven, yes! At once! Glorious warfare!
Alright, run them all down.
Hasten! Hurry! Council's command! Skizzer and leap! Now you die! Clan rats! Aim! Storm demon! Now! At once, master! Doomflayer! Scampering! Attack!
Okay, good. I maybe didn't even need... I think that, like, those two... 2 was probably good, Menace from Below. Maybe 1 would have been alright. But yeah, we're... So this is not a town, so we need to get in here. The only kind of bad thing about that is I did take a little bit more damage on the Warlock than I would like, but he is going to replenish a little bit, so... They are really inaccurate. Oh, never mind. They actually did kill most of them.
War systems on! Ikkit claw!
Okay, boys, let's chill on it. Yeah, they have so much ammo anyways. I mean, the infinite ammo, I guess, is cute, but... I mean...
Your desire!
You don't entirely need it. Let's see if the snipers can get him.
Ikkit claw!
See, they're pretty dang accurate. I mean, they're not, like, Wood Elf accurate, but... Like, they're getting pretty close to him on those shots.
Scamper!
Man, I love me some Skaven. I don't know. So thank y'all so much for sponsoring this campaign. Skaven are really fun. There's just so many different units, and they're just so much fun to micro. I think they are one of the highest skill cap factions as far as like in the battles, because like I said, they can be really weak if you aren't microing them. Like, there's just so many like little abilities you can do with each one. We out of range? We should be in range to take one more shot. Well, we can run these up here too and see if we can... Should be able to run him down, I think. A little bit faster than I thought. Oh, I've got it on 2x speed. I totally forgot about that. Got him. Yeah, see, they all do pretty well in their own little right. In different situations. So yeah, these didn't take any damage at all from activating their warp thing because they never got touched by the enemy. The only thing was he was face tanking a battalion of spears, and I didn't react to that fast enough, so he took a little bit more damage than I would like, but it's okay. I can just position him better in the next couple of fights. So they did come out on us. I mean, there's a chance we could try to siege him. These units are not amazing on sieges, though. Like, some of the weapons teams are very good, but these are not those weapons teams that are really good at sieges, so I could use a bunch of food, maybe. I used 6 food in the fight. We gained a little bit more here.
Death contraptions to fund. No use for this flesh.
We need money this early in the campaign, I think. It does take food to do
Spoils
that,
pay for
but you do get upkeep reduction for the army, so that's actually pretty nice. Now, the speed and charge
Much
bonus doesn't, I
suffering
mean,
paid
it doesn't
to
matter
be
that much.
had.
You just have a bunch of stuff that just sits in front of them, pretty much.
Death contraptions to fund. Powered up.
And the enemy will often underestimate you also because it's hard for them to calculate how well you're going to micro the units in the fight, right? So if it was just like the AI, I mean, the AI is actually pretty good at microing stuff. I'd say it's on par with the average player, maybe even better.
Nobody, nothing conquers
Okay, I'm just going to do only faction-wide caps. So what that means, and you can choose to do this or not do this when you're playing your own SFO, but that just means that you have to have like high-tier buildings in order to hire high-tier units. So for example, I can't just have one Storm Vermin building and hire like 30 Storm Vermin. You have to build more and more and more. So it limits how many top-tier units you can get, which I think is fun. It forces a little bit of extra diversity in your tactics. If you do army caps on top of that, I've tried that before. You can work around it. It just delays the campaign a little bit. It lowers the power level and forces you to have multiple armies. So that does increase diversity even more. What that means is you can only have so much of a certain type of unit in your army, right? So I can only have like what they'll call 6 special units in my army. And I don't remember how all of those get classified if you pick it, but I remember something like Storm Vermin, for example, is a special unit. So I could only have 6 of those, and then that would limit. But I could only have 6 total. I think another, what are they classified as? There was one that was like not an elite unit, but it was something like that, where it was an elite unit. You could only have 4 of those, and like the weapons teams would likely count as elite units. I could only have 4 weapons teams, period, in my army. Right, that's it, and anything else that they would consider elite. So they might consider like Eshin Triads elite. They might consider Death Runners elite, things like that. So I can only have 4 total between Eshin Triads, Death Runners, weapons teams, anything else that they classified as elite. So it just really hampers and forces you to use a lot of low-tier units throughout most of the campaign, which you could do as Skaven. You have a bunch of fodder, but it just limits kind of the creativity and fun of it. So a little too much. So I kind of meet them halfway in the middle, go for the faction-wide caps. That limits kind of your top-end units you can use, but you can still have a pretty good diversity of mid-tier units. You just have to develop your towns a little bit more and plan around that better. Okay, so we can run them down, get another kill off of that, and then we might just go ahead and siege Magrita. They don't have that much. I think if we get... if we get siege towers, I think we can probably take them. So we'll go ahead and kill them, siege them. We'll kill this army, siege them. But that's going to be the next episode. I just want to keep going with it, but we got to cut it off there. We'll save that fight. That'll be at the start of next episode. We'll do this siege, and then we'll start working our way north to Bilbali. And we're going to keep trying to upgrade Skaven Blight. Remember, that's the #1 order of business, is to get Skaven Blight up to tier 3 early on so we can get, and we need to save, so we need 3,000 for that, 4,500 for that, that's 7,500. And then, wow, that's actually really cheap. The Cavern's only 2,500 gold. I thought that was going to be way more. So that's good. We are getting a discount right now. I maybe should have waited on that discount. How long does this last? It's 4 turns. Okay. We should be able to get a discount on this and this. It's only 750 for that. So we will get some nice discounts on some of our units. But I think it was the right call just to go for the food, because getting this food all the way up to this range ASAP is probably the best option. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. As always, I really appreciate special thanks to everyone that sponsored this campaign. If you'd like to sponsor a campaign yourself, be sure to email me at thestrategyprofessor@gmail.com. Let me know what you have in mind. We can probably set that up. I'm also doing a Beastman campaign at the same time when I release this one, so be sure to check out the Beastman campaign with Malagor, SFO. There's a lot of really cool extra features they added on SFO if you've never played the Beastman there. It's really fun. There's a lot of stuff, especially if you like Skaven and just all kinds of min-maxing and different strategic systems. And I mean, who doesn't like that in a strategy game? Beastman has a lot of that too, so be sure, go check that out. It's a good time. And then fairly recently, I'm going to do a few more episodes of the Aletha Nar campaign that I had going on as well as High Elf, and I did a Bretonia Fey Enchantress. That's another one that SFO overhauled fairly recently, was the Bretonian. So be sure to check that one out. They're a lot more interesting, a lot more fun than they used to be in the past. They used to be one of my least favorite factions, to be perfectly honest with you, the Bretonians, because I just didn't think there was that much diversity. It was just a bunch of cavalry, but they actually added a bunch of pretty cool features to it that made it a lot more interesting, so be sure to go back and check that out as well if you're interested. And we have dozens and dozens of other campaigns on the channel as well, and we're always coming up with new stuff, so be sure to like and subscribe if you really like that in-depth explanatory content that I try to bring you, as well as hopefully some good gameplay and good battles. So that's going to be it. Have a good day, and we'll see everybody next time.